My name is Wyatt Lawson, and at 68 years old, I never imagined my own son would humiliate me on my birthday. After 30 years as a military man and another 15 practicing law, I thought I had seen it all. But nothing prepared me for Thomas throwing my birthday cake to the floor, looking me dead in the eyes, and saying those words I will never forget. His wife Amanda just stood there laughing. If you have ever been betrayed by your own family, drop a comment below and subscribe to hear how I made sure they lost everything the very next day. Life has a funny way of teaching you who truly cares about you. For most of my life, I believed family was everything. I dedicated 30 years to serving my country in the Army, rising to the rank of colonel before retiring and pursuing a law degree. Law became my second career, and I practiced for 15 years before finally retiring for good 6 years ago. My specialty was family and estate law, ironically enough. My wife Sarah was the love of my life. We met when I was stationed in Fort Bragg, and she was working as a nurse at the local hospital. She supported me through multiple deployments, raised our son Thomas, and stood by me when I decided to go to law school in my 40s. We had plans for our retirement years together, traveling the country in an RV, visiting national parks, and spending time with Thomas and his future family. But life had other plans. 5 years ago, Sarah was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer, and within 6 months, she was gone. The hole her absence left in my life was immeasurable. After Sarah passed, Thomas and I grew closer for a while. He would come over every Sunday for dinner, and we would watch football together, just like when he was growing up. Thomas had always been a good kid, smart and ambitious, but also kind and thoughtful. He had my determination and Sarah's compassionate heart. At least, that was what I thought. Everything changed when Thomas met Amanda at his investment firm 3 years ago. She was beautiful, charismatic, and ambitious, working in the marketing department. Thomas was immediately smitten. Their courtship was brief, and within 6 months, they were engaged. I tried to be happy for my son, but something about Amanda always felt off to me. Sarah would have said I was being overprotective, but my instincts from years in both military and legal fields were sending warning signals. After they married, Thomas began to change. Our Sunday dinners became less frequent. When he did visit, all he talked about was their plans to move to a bigger house, buy luxury cars, and take exotic vacations. The humble, grounded young man I raised was being replaced by someone obsessed with status and appearances. When Thomas and Amanda decided to buy their first home together 2 years ago, they came to me for help. The house they wanted was beautiful but well beyond what they could reasonably afford on their salaries. Against my better judgment, I agreed to help by becoming a co-owner and contributing a significant portion of the down payment, nearly $200,000 from my retirement savings. I told myself I was just helping my son get established, like any good father would. Both Thomas and Amanda worked in the financial sector, making decent salaries, but they lived far beyond their means. Designer clothes, fancy restaurants, membership at an exclusive country club, their lifestyle was unsustainable. More than once, Thomas came to me asking for loans to cover credit card debt or unexpected expenses. Each time, I helped, hoping it would be the last time. But the requests kept coming, and the amounts grew larger. I tried to talk to Thomas about financial responsibility, offering to help them create a budget or invest wisely for their future. My suggestions were met with eye rolls and dismissive comments about how I was old-fashioned and did not understand modern lifestyles. Amanda would make snide remarks about how I should enjoy spending my money while I still could, instead of hoarding it. Our weekly family dinners, when they did happen, transformed from pleasant gatherings to tense meetings that inevitably ended with Thomas asking for money. They would arrive late, barely touch the food I prepared, and spend most of the time on their phones or complaining about their co-workers. Thomas would then awkwardly bring up some financial difficulty they were facing, making it clear they expected me to solve it. Amanda never tried to hide her materialistic nature. She constantly compared their possessions to those of her friends or colleagues, always finding theirs lacking. Nothing was ever good enough, new enough, or expensive enough. She pushed Thomas to keep up with her ever-escalating desires, and I watched my son transform from someone who once volunteered at homeless shelters to someone who complained about the brand of champagne served at corporate events. Despite everything, I held on to hope that Thomas would eventually see through the superficial world Amanda had pulled him into. I kept photos of him from childhood around the house. Images of the kind-hearted boy who once saved his allowance to buy medicine for a neighbor's sick cat. The teenager who tutored struggling classmates for free. The young man who sat by his mother's hospital bed reading her favorite poems as she slipped away. Somewhere inside the stranger my son had become, I believed that person still existed. But as the months passed, our relationship deteriorated further. Phone calls went unanswered. Invitations were declined with flimsy excuses. The few times we did interact, Thomas seemed distracted and impatient, eager to extract whatever financial assistance he could before disappearing again. I felt like an ATM machine rather than a father, a resource to be tapped rather than a person to be respected or loved. Friends suggested I cut Thomas off financially, but I could not bring myself to do it. What if he really was struggling? What if Amanda was pressuring him? What if this was just a phase he needed to work through? The thought of abandoning my only child, my last connection to Sarah, was unbearable. So I continued to help when asked, clinging to the fading hope that my real son would return to me someday. I woke up on the morning of my 68th birthday with a strange mixture of melancholy and hope. Another year without Sarah, another milestone she would not share, but also another chance to reconnect with Thomas, to perhaps spark some memory of the family we once were. Birthdays had always been special in our household. Sarah made sure of that, with her handmade decorations and perfectly crafted cakes. Even when I was deployed, she would send care packages timed to arrive exactly on my birthday, no matter where I was stationed. My phone buzzed with a text message from my niece Lisa, my sister Jane's daughter. "Happy birthday, Uncle Wyatt. Thinking of you today. Let's have lunch next week." Lisa was a bright spot in my life, especially since Sarah's passing. At 32, she was pursuing a successful career in corporate law while raising twin boys with her husband Mark. Despite her busy schedule, she always made time to check on me. A few other messages trickled in throughout the morning. Old army buddies, former colleagues from my law practice, neighbors, but nothing from Thomas. I told myself he was probably planning to surprise me later. After a simple breakfast, I decided to bake myself a small birthday cake. Sarah's recipe for carrot cake with cream cheese frosting, my favorite. As I grated carrots and measured spices, I could almost hear her voice guiding me through the steps. She was always amused by my military precision in the kitchen, measuring ingredients to the exact gram, lining up tools in perfect order. Baking the cake felt like having a conversation with her memory. While the cake cooled, I found myself looking through old photo albums. Thomas blowing out candles on his 5th birthday, chocolate frosting smeared across his grinning face. My 40th birthday, when Sarah and teenage Thomas surprised me with tickets to see the Cardinals play. Our last family birthday, Sarah's 61st, just 3 months before her diagnosis. We had no idea then that it would be her final one. For dinner, I planned to prepare Thomas's childhood favorite, my famous pot roast with roasted potatoes and Sarah's secret recipe gravy. Thomas used to request this meal for his own birthdays until he was well into his 20s. I hoped the familiar comfort food might spark something in him, some recognition of our shared history. I drove to the grocery store mid-morning, selecting the perfect cut of meat, the freshest vegetables. I added a bottle of good Cabernet Sauvignon to my cart, Thomas's preferred wine. Though I rarely drank these days, I wanted everything to be special. I also picked up some fresh flowers for the dining table, blue hydrangeas that reminded me of Sarah's garden. Back home, I spent time cleaning and tidying the house, though it was already immaculate. Old military habits die hard. I set the dining room table with our best china, the set Sarah and I received as a wedding gift 45 years ago. I polished the silver candlesticks that had belonged to my mother and pressed the good linen napkins. While the pot roast slow cooked, filling the house with savory aromas. I wrapped Thomas's gift. I had been saving my father's vintage pocket watch for a special occasion. Dad had received it from his father, who brought it from Ireland when he immigrated to America in 1920. The gold case was engraved with our family crest, and inside was an inscription dating back almost a century. I hoped that passing this heirloom to Thomas might remind him of his place in our family's story, of the values and traditions that shaped us. At 3 in the afternoon, I called Thomas to confirm our dinner plans for 6 o'clock. "When can we expect you and Amanda?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light and conversational. "Oh, right, your birthday," Thomas replied, sounding distracted. "Yeah, we will be there. Probably around 6, depends on traffic." "I am making pot roast," I said hopefully. "Your favorite." "Cool," he responded flatly. "Look, I have to go. In a meeting. See you later." The call ended before I could respond. Not exactly the enthusiastic response I had hoped for, but at least they were coming. I pushed aside my disappointment and focused on finishing my preparations. At 5:30, I showered and dressed in my best suit, dark navy with a light blue tie that Sarah had given me for our last anniversary together. The suit was a bit looser than when she bought it. My appetite had diminished since living alone. I combed my silver hair neatly and put on the cologne Sarah always said made her feel safe, like coming home. 6 o'clock came and went. No Thomas, no Amanda. I sent a text asking if they were running late. No response. I kept the pot roast warm in the oven and waited patiently in the living room, watching the hands of the grandfather clock tick steadily forward. 6:30, 7, 7:30. Just as I was beginning to think they would not show at all, headlights flashed across the living room window. A car door slammed, then another. Voices approached the front door, Amanda's high-pitched laugh cutting through the evening quiet. I smoothed my tie, took a deep breath, and went to greet my son and his wife, still clinging to the hope that this birthday might somehow mark a turning point in our relationship. The doorbell rang at 8:15. Over 2 hours after our agreed meeting time. I opened the door to find Thomas and Amanda standing there, neither looking particularly apologetic for their tardiness. Thomas wore an expensive tailored suit I had never seen before, with a designer watch glinting on his wrist. Amanda was dressed in a sleek black dress, diamond earrings catching the porch light. Both looked as though they were coming from a corporate gala rather than a family birthday dinner. "Sorry we are late," Thomas said flatly. No actual remorse in his voice. "Traffic was awful. And then we had to stop for drinks with the Andersons," Amanda added with a dismissive wave of her manicured hand. "You know how it is." I did not, in fact, know how it was to prioritize drinks with friends over a commitment to family, but I swallowed my disappointment and ushered them inside. "Happy birthday, Dad," Thomas said belatedly, handing me a small gift bag that still had the store receipt stapled to it. The price tag showed it had been purchased just an hour ago, clearly an afterthought. "Thank you for coming," I said sincerely, leading them to the dining room where the table was set and candles were burning low. The dinner I had so carefully prepared was now overcooked despite my efforts to keep it warm. "Oh, we already ate," Thomas announced as he saw the table. "The Andersons insisted we join them for appetizers and then we just kept ordering. You should have mentioned you were cooking. I explicitly told you I was making pot roast during our call this afternoon," I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "Did you?" Thomas shrugged. "Must have slipped my mind." Amanda was already wandering around the living room, picking up framed photos and setting them down without much interest. "That suit looks a bit dated, does not it, Wyatt?" she commented, eyeing my attire with a critical gaze. "Thomas could take you shopping sometime, show you what men are wearing these days." I bit back a retort about the sentimental value of the suit. It would be lost on her anyway. "Can I get you something to drink at least?" I offered, trying to salvage the evening. "I have wine, coffee, tea. Do you have any sparkling water?" Amanda asked. "Still water is so boring." "I am afraid not," I apologized. "Just regular filtered water." Amanda sighed dramatically, as if my lack of sparkling water was a personal affront. Thomas loosened his tie and sprawled on the sofa, already pulling out his phone. For the next hour, I attempted to engage them in conversation. How was work going? Had they seen any good movies lately? Were they planning any trips? Their responses were minimal, distracted. Amanda dominated what little conversation there was with tales of her recent shopping excursions and complaints about co-workers who did not appreciate her talents. "We just booked a 2-week trip to the Maldives," she announced proudly. "Private villa over the water, personal butler service, the works. Cost an absolute fortune. But Thomas says we deserve it. Do not we, honey?" Thomas nodded absently, still scrolling through his phone. "That sounds lovely," I responded, though I could not help thinking about the financial implications of such an extravagant vacation for a couple who frequently claimed to be strapped for cash. "Will you be going soon?" "Next month," Thomas finally looked up. "We have been working so hard, need to decompress." I tried to steer the conversation toward memories, hoping to reconnect with the son I once knew. "Remember those camping trips we used to take in the Adirondacks?" I asked. "Your mother always packed those special trail mix cookies." Thomas barely glanced up. "Yeah, that was a long time ago." Amanda checked her watch ostentatiously. "Speaking of time," she said, "we should probably get to the point of this visit." "Thomas?" Thomas finally put his phone down and leaned forward. "Dad, we have an amazing investment opportunity. Absolutely guaranteed returns, but we need to act fast." And there it was. The real reason for their visit. "What kind of investment?" I asked cautiously. Thomas launched into a vague explanation about a real estate development project, using buzzwords like synergy and leveraging assets without providing any substantive details. The bottom line, it seemed, was that they needed $50,000 by the end of the week. "We will pay you back double within 6 months, Thomas promised. "This is a sure thing." I had heard similar promises before. "Can I see the prospectus?" I asked. "Any documentation about this investment?" Thomas and Amanda exchanged glances. "It is confidential," Thomas said quickly. "Investors have to sign NDAs. But trust me, this is legit. I am sorry, but I cannot invest that kind of money without proper documentation," I said firmly. "Why not bring the paperwork over tomorrow, and we can go through it together?" "There is not time for that," Amanda snapped, her friendly facade cracking. "We need an answer now." "Then my answer is no," I replied. "I am happy to look at this opportunity properly, but I will not hand over $50,000 based on vague assurances." Thomas's face darkened. "You never support my business ventures," he accused. "You think I am not smart enough to recognize a good investment." "That is not true at all," I protested. "I just want to make sure this is sound. I have a responsibility to manage my retirement funds wisely." "Your retirement funds?" Amanda repeated with a sneer. "As if you need all that money just for yourself. Meanwhile, we are trying to build a future." The tension in the room was palpable. I decided to try changing the subject, to salvage what remained of my birthday evening. I stood up. "I made a cake," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Let me bring it out, and perhaps we can end the evening on a sweeter note." I went to the kitchen and carefully lit the candles on the carrot cake I had baked that morning. 68 small flames flickered in the dimly lit room. I took a deep breath and carried it carefully to the living room, where Thomas and Amanda were having a hushed, intense conversation that ceased abruptly when I entered. "Here we go," I said, setting the cake on the coffee table. "I used your mother's recipe, Thomas." Thomas stared at the cake without emotion. I made a silent wish as I prepared to blow out the candles, a simple wish for reconciliation and understanding between us. As I leaned forward, Thomas suddenly stood up. In one swift, deliberate motion, he swept his arm across the table, sending the cake crashing to the floor. Candles sputtered out against the carpet, and frosting splattered across the hardwood. I stared in shock at the destroyed cake, unable to process what had just happened. When I looked up, Thomas was standing over me, a cold smile on his face that I did not recognize. "Eat it, old man. That is all you are good for now." Amanda laughed beside him, a harsh sound devoid of any real humor. "You should see your face right now," she said, pulling out her phone as if to take a picture of my devastation. I sat there, Frosting splattered on my shoes and the cuffs of my pants, feeling as though I had been physically struck. This was not my son. This could not be the boy Sarah and I had raised with love and care. Yet here he stood, looking down at me with contempt, a stranger wearing my child's face. "Thomas," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. "Why would you do this?" "Because you are pathetic," he replied coldly. "Sitting here in this mausoleum of a house, clinging to the past. Mom is gone. Your glory days are over. All you have left is your money, and you will not even use it to help your own son." "I have helped you countless times," I said, finding my voice again. "I have given you money. I helped buy your house. I have always been there for you." "Never enough," Amanda interjected. "Do you know how embarrassing it is that Thomas's father lives like this when you could afford so much better? People talk, you know. They wonder why you are so stingy with your own family." I looked from one hostile face to the other, trying to comprehend how we had arrived at this point. The cake lay ruined on the floor between us, a sad metaphor for our fractured relationship. "I think you should leave now," I said finally, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Gladly," Thomas replied, grabbing his coat. "Good luck cleaning up your pathetic little party. Let me know when you are ready to help your family for real." They left without another word, the front door slamming behind them. I sat alone in my living room, birthday candles still smoking faintly amid the ruins of Sarah's carrot cake, wondering how the son we raised could have become someone capable of such cruelty. After Thomas and Amanda left, I sat motionless in my darkened living room for nearly an hour. The ruined cake remained on the floor, a visual reminder of the evening's devastation. The house felt cavernous around me, filled with memories that suddenly seemed to belong to another life entirely. I could not reconcile the Thomas who had just left with the boy who once made me handmade birthday cards, who cried when he accidentally broke my favorite coffee mug, who held his mother's hand during her final days. The ringing of my phone finally broke my trance. I answered automatically, not bothering to check who was calling. "Wyatt?" It was Howard Brennan, an old friend from my military days who now worked as a senior loan officer at First National Bank. His voice sounded concerned. "Are you okay?" "Not really," I admitted. "How did you know?" "I did not, until now," Howard replied. "I was calling about something else entirely. But now I am worried. What is going on?" I briefly explained the disaster that was my birthday dinner, though I left out the most painful details. Howard listened patiently, then cleared his throat. "That actually connects to why I was calling," he said hesitantly. "Wyatt, did you recently try to take out a second mortgage on your house?" "No," I responded, confusion cutting through my emotional fog. "Why would I do that?" "That is what I thought," Howard said grimly. "Someone came into the bank today with paperwork for a second mortgage on your property. The signature looked close enough to yours that it raised questions, but something seemed off to Angela in processing. She remembered you from when you handled her divorce case years ago and contacted me directly. My legal training kicked in immediately. "Are you saying someone forged my signature?" "I cannot make that accusation officially," Howard said carefully. "But as your friend, yes, that is exactly what I am saying. And given what you just told me about your evening with Thomas." "Thomas," I echoed, the pieces beginning to fit together in a sickening pattern. He had access to my personal documents whenever he visited. He would know what my signature looked like. "There is more," Howard continued reluctantly. "The funds were to be transferred to a new account. One opened last week in both your name and Thomas's. Again, with signatures that looked convincing but raised red flags with our fraud department." My mind raced through implications. "How much was the mortgage for?" $300,000, Howard replied. I felt physically ill. That was nearly the full equity value of my home. If I had not caught this, I could have lost everything. "Howard, I need copies of all those documents," I said, lawyer mode fully engaged now. "Officially, I cannot provide those without a subpoena," Howard said. "Unofficially, check your email in an hour." After hanging up, I went to my home office and powered up my old laptop. Years of legal practice had taught me to be methodical, to follow evidence wherever it led, even when the path was painful. I began by reviewing my bank statements for the past year, looking for any unusual activity. What I found disturbed me deeply. Small withdrawals I did not recognize, changes to account settings I had not authorized, attempts to increase my credit card limits. It was as if someone had been systematically testing the waters of my financial security, seeing what they could get away with. Next, I logged into the online portal for the investment firm that managed my retirement accounts. Again, there were unauthorized access attempts, though thankfully the additional security measures I had insisted on had prevented any actual changes or withdrawals. Howard's email arrived with copies of the forged mortgage application and account opening documents. The signature was good, close enough to pass a casual inspection, but I could see subtle differences that proved it wasn't mine. What disturbed me more was seeing Thomas's authentic signature beside the forgery, co-signing as if we were partners in this transaction. I remembered Thomas had worked briefly in document processing before moving to investment sales. He would know exactly how to create convincing forgeries and navigate the approval process. The thought of my son using skills from his professional life to defraud me was almost too painful to bear. As I dug deeper, more troubling information emerged. A quick online search revealed that Thomas's investment firm was under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission for potential fraud involving client accounts. Several clients had filed complaints about unauthorized transactions and missing funds. Thomas's name wasn't mentioned specifically in the news articles, but the timing aligned perfectly with his increasingly desperate requests for money. My doorbell rang at 11:30, startling me from my research. I opened it to find my niece Lisa standing there, concern written across her face. "Uncle Wyatt, I am so sorry to come by so late," she said as I ushered her in. "I tried calling, but you didn't answer. And after what Thomas did, what do you know about that?" I asked, surprised. Lisa's expression darkened. "Amanda has been posting about it on social media, making jokes about your reaction when Thomas destroyed your cake. She is framing it like you deserved it for being stingy. It is disgusting." I felt a fresh wave of humiliation knowing my painful moment had been turned into social media entertainment. But beneath the embarrassment, a new question formed. "Lisa, how did you know where Thomas and Amanda were earlier this evening, before they came here?" Lisa hesitated. "I have been meaning to tell you this for a while," she admitted. "I have seen them several times at Westfield Country Club over the past few months, always with a different group of older people. At first, I thought it was just business networking, but something seemed off." "What do you mean?" I pressed. "They would show up in expensive clothes, buying rounds of drinks, talking about investment opportunities." Lisa worked as a corporate attorney and had a keen eye for suspicious behavior. The people they were with always looked wealthy but somehow vulnerable. Widows, recent retirees, people who might have substantial savings but limited financial knowledge. "Uncle Wyatt, I think they might be running some kind of investment scam," Lisa said bluntly. "I overheard Amanda once telling Thomas they needed to find more cash cows." The final piece clicked into place. My son wasn't just trying to get money from me. He was potentially defrauding numerous vulnerable people. The SEC investigation, the forged documents, the desperate need for cash. It all pointed to a scheme that was possibly collapsing around him. Lisa helped me search property records online. What we discovered confirmed my worst fears. Thomas and Amanda had taken out a massive new mortgage on their house 3 months ago, despite telling me they were doing well financially. They had also listed the property with a real estate agent just last week, with an asking price well above market value. "I am so sorry, Uncle Wyatt," Lisa said, squeezing my hand. "I should have told you sooner what I suspected." "No, I should have seen it myself," I replied. "I was too busy seeing the son I wanted him to be instead of the man he has become." As we continued our investigation through the night, one final devastating discovery awaited us. Thomas and Amanda had booked one-way tickets to Belize, departing in 3 days. Not the Maldives as they had claimed. Belize. a country known for its banking privacy laws and limited extradition agreements with the United States. They weren't planning a vacation. They were planning to flee the country with whatever money they could extract from their victims, myself included. By dawn, I sat at my kitchen table, surrounded by evidence of my son's betrayal, facing the most difficult decision of my life. I could either protect Thomas from the consequences of his actions, or I could protect his victims, including myself. As the sun rose on the day after my 68th birthday, I knew what I had to do, even though it would break my heart all over again. The morning after my birthday disaster, I faced a painful crossroads. Every instinct as a father urged me to protect Thomas, to find some way to help him out of whatever trouble he was in. But the lawyer in me, the man who had spent decades upholding justice, knew that enabling his behavior would only lead to more victims, more pain. If Thomas was indeed defrauding vulnerable people, my silence would make me complicit. I called Frank Donovan, an attorney who had taken over my practice when I retired. Frank specialized in financial crimes and had contacts throughout the legal system. "Wyatt, it has been too long." Frank greeted me warmly. "What can I do for you?" "I need advice, Frank," I replied, my voice heavy. "It is about Thomas." Over the next hour, I laid out everything I had discovered, from the forged mortgage documents to the SEC investigation to the one-way tickets to Belize. Frank listened without interruption, taking occasional notes. "First, let me say how sorry I am that you are going through this," Frank said when I finished. "As your friend, I can see how devastating this must be. As your lawyer, I need to be clear about your options and their implications." Frank explained that if Thomas was indeed engaged in financial fraud, both through his professional position and through attempting to defraud me, he could face serious federal charges: securities fraud, wire fraud, attempted bank fraud through the forged mortgage application. The potential consequences were severe. "What would happen to him?" I asked, still unable to separate the criminal from the little boy I had raised. "Depending on the scale of the fraud and number of victims, he could face significant prison time," Frank answered honestly. "But Wyatt, you need to consider the alternative. If you do nothing, more people will be harmed, including potentially yourself. And it sounds like Thomas and Amanda are planning to flee the country imminently." "I know you are right," I acknowledged. "What should my first steps be?" Frank outlined a plan of action. First, I needed to secure my own financial accounts and property. Then, we would need to document everything I had discovered and report it to the appropriate authorities. Finally, we would need to act quickly to prevent Thomas and Amanda from leaving the country before investigations could begin. My first call was to every financial institution where I held accounts. I froze joint accounts, changed passwords, and placed fraud alerts on my credit reports. Next, I contacted the company managing my retirement accounts to ensure no withdrawals could be made without additional verification. Frank accompanied me to the local FBI field office, where we met with an agent specializing in financial crimes. Agent Ramirez listened intently as I shared my evidence, his expression growing more serious by the minute. "My name is Wyatt Lawson, and at 68 years old, I never imagined my own son would humiliate me on my birthday. After 30 years as a military man and another 15 practicing law, I thought I had seen it all. But nothing prepared me for Thomas throwing my birthday cake to the floor, looking me dead in the eyes, and saying those words I will never forget. His wife Amanda just stood there laughing. I learned that several of Thomas's colleagues were already under scrutiny for a suspected Ponzi scheme targeting wealthy retirees. Investors were promised exceptional returns, but in reality, new investor money was being used to pay earlier investors, with the organizers skimming substantial amounts for themselves. The scheme was beginning to collapse as returns diminished and investors demanded their money back. As a co-owner of the house Thomas and Amanda lived in, I had legal standing to prevent its sale. With Frank's help, I filed an emergency injunction blocking the transaction, pending investigation of potential fraud. The real estate agent, upon being informed of the situation, revealed that Thomas had told potential buyers I was a silent partner, enthusiastically supporting the sale. Another lie. Agent Ramirez arranged for the information about the one-way tickets to be forwarded to the appropriate departments. Monitors would be placed on Thomas and Amanda's passports to prevent them from leaving the country while the investigation proceeded. Throughout this whirlwind of legal activity, a heavy weight pressed on my chest. I was setting in motion events that would likely destroy my son's life as he knew it. Yet every document I reviewed, every deception I uncovered, reinforced that I had no ethical choice. The Thomas I loved had been replaced by someone I no longer recognized, someone willing to steal from his own father and vulnerable strangers alike. That evening, I made one final attempt to reach Thomas, to give him a chance to come clean and face the consequences with some dignity intact. He answered on the fourth ring, sounding irritated. "What do you want? Still upset about your cake?" "Thomas," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I know about the forged mortgage application. I know about the SEC investigation at your firm. I know about the tickets to Belize." Silence stretched across the line for several seconds. "I do not know what you are talking about," he finally said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Yes, you do," I replied sadly. "I am giving you one chance, son. Turn yourself in. Make restitution to anyone you have harmed. Face this head on, and I will stand by you through whatever comes next. I will help you find good legal representation. I will visit you wherever you end up. But I cannot and will not help you escape the consequences of your actions." "You would not dare turn me in," Thomas hissed, abandoning his denials. "Your own son? What would Mom say?" The mention of Sarah nearly broke me, but I held firm. "Your mother raised you to be honest and compassionate. She would be heartbroken at what you have become. I am heartbroken, but I will not be complicit in harming innocent people." "You are choosing strangers over your own blood," Thomas accused. "You know what? When all this blows over, I am going to have you declared incompetent, put you in the cheapest nursing home I can find. See how you like being helpless then." The threat confirmed that I was making the right decision, however painful. This was not my son speaking, but a desperate, cornered man with no moral compass. "I am sorry it has come to this, Thomas," I said quietly. "I truly am. But everything is already in motion. Your accounts will be frozen by morning. The house cannot be sold. Your passports have been flagged. The best thing you can do now is cooperate and make amends. You will regret this, old man." Thomas spat before hanging up. I sat in my silent house, phone in hand, mourning the son I had lost long before this moment. Tomorrow would bring the final confrontation, but tonight I allowed myself to grieve for the family that once was and would never be again. The next morning arrived with a shrill ringing of my phone at 6:15. Thomas's name flashed on the screen, and I answered with a heavy heart, knowing the storm had broken. "What the hell did you do?" he shouted, his voice a mixture of rage and panic. "Our accounts are frozen. The bank says there is a federal investigation." "I told you last night what was happening, Thomas," I replied calmly. "I gave you a chance to come forward voluntarily." "Fix this," Thomas demanded. "Call them off. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." "I cannot do that, even if I wanted to," I explained. "The evidence speaks for itself. This is beyond just you and me now." Thomas launched into a tirade of threats and accusations, his voice growing increasingly desperate. In the background, I could hear Amanda screaming about their frozen assets and canceled credit cards. When his rage finally exhausted itself, I made a simple offer. "Come to the house at noon. Bring Amanda. We will talk about where things stand and what options you might still have." "Why should we?" Thomas snapped. "Because right now, I may be the only person still willing to help you find a path forward," I answered truthfully. After a tense silence, Thomas grudgingly agreed and hung up. I spent the next few hours preparing mentally and emotionally for what would certainly be a difficult confrontation. I arranged the evidence we had gathered in clear, logical order on my dining room table. Frank had offered to be present, but I declined. This needed to be family business, at least initially. At precisely 12 o'clock, a car screeched into my driveway. Thomas and Amanda stormed up the walkway, looking disheveled and angry, a stark contrast to their polished appearance from the night before. "Let us get one thing straight," Thomas announced as they burst through the door. "You are going to fix this mess you created, or we are done forever. No more father and son. Is that what you want?" I gestured toward the dining room. "Please sit down. There is a lot we need to discuss." Amanda looked around suspiciously. "Are you recording this? Is this some kind of trap?" "No recordings," I assured them. "Just honest conversation about the situation you have created, and where we go from here." "That we created?" Thomas scoffed. "You are the one who called the feds." Calmly, methodically, I began laying out what we had discovered: the forged mortgage application, the unauthorized access to my financial accounts, the suspicious activities at Thomas's firm, the scheduled departure to Belize. With each piece of evidence I presented, Thomas's belligerent posture deflated slightly. "This is ridiculous," Thomas attempted, but his denial lacked conviction. Anyone could have made those account changes. That signature could be legitimate. "You are getting forgetful." I pulled out the document Howard had provided, showing the forged signature alongside exemplars of my actual signature. Even to an untrained eye, the differences were apparent upon close inspection. "And what about this?" I asked, revealing printouts of Amanda's social media posts mocking my birthday humiliation. "And these? The one-way tickets to Belize, not round-trip tickets to the Maldives as you claimed." Thomas fell silent, his eyes darting around as if seeking an escape route. Amanda, however, was less willing to accept defeat. "So what if we took some shortcuts?" She spat. "Do you know how hard it is to get ahead these days? Thomas deserves better than his mediocre salary. We have standards to maintain. By stealing from vulnerable people? By defrauding your own father?" I questioned. "Those are not shortcuts, Amanda. Those are crimes." Thomas rubbed his face wearily. "Dad, look. Things got out of hand, I admit that. But surely we can work something out. Family protects family, right?" There was a hint of the old Thomas in his plea, a glimpse of the son I remembered. But I could not allow myself to be manipulated again. "The protection should have gone both ways," I replied. "You should have protected me from fraud, not targeted me for it." "This is all your fault," Amanda suddenly screamed at Thomas, her composed facade crumbling entirely. "You said your father would never check the mortgage papers. You said he trusted you completely. Now we are ruined." Thomas looked at her in shock. "My fault? This whole scheme was your idea. I never wanted to target my own father." Their unified front collapsed as they turned on each other, revealing even more of their deceptions in their mutual recriminations. Amanda had apparently been the architect of targeting me specifically, while Thomas had been running the broader investment fraud through his professional connections. "Enough," I finally interrupted their bickering. "Here is where things stand. Your assets are frozen pending investigation. The house cannot be sold because I have filed an injunction as co-owner. Your passports have been flagged, so leaving the country is not an option. The FBI is investigating the investment scheme, and several of your colleagues have already been arrested." Thomas paled visibly. "Are they coming for me next?" "Most likely," I acknowledged. "But you still have one opportunity that they don't." "What is that?" he asked, a desperate edge to his voice. "You can cooperate fully," I explained. "You can make restitution to your victims. You can accept responsibility for your actions and demonstrate genuine remorse. It won't eliminate the consequences, but it could significantly reduce them." Amanda let out a bitter laugh. "Cooperation? Restitution? Do you have any idea how much money is involved? We don't have it anymore. It's gone on the lifestyle, the trips, the clothes." Thomas turned to her with growing horror. "All of it? What about the offshore accounts you set up?" Amanda's eyes widened in alarm, realizing she had revealed too much. "I do not know what you are talking about." She backpedaled unconvincingly. Thomas looked from Amanda to me, then back to Amanda, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "Did you take money for yourself that I did not know about?" Their relationship unraveled before my eyes as trust collapsed entirely. Amanda's careful manipulations were exposed, revealing that she had been planning her own escape route, separate from Thomas. "I need to use the bathroom," Amanda announced suddenly, grabbing her purse and rushing from the room. Moments later, We heard the front door slam instead. Through the window, I watched her sprint to the car and drive away, leaving Thomas behind. "She is not coming back, is she?" Thomas asked, his voice small and defeated. "I do not think so," I replied gently. Thomas collapsed into a dining chair, staring at the evidence of his crimes spread across the table. "What have I done?" he whispered. "What have I become?" For the first time in years, I saw genuine emotion in my son's eyes. Not calculation or contempt, but real despair and shame. "I have conditions if I am going to help you through this," I said firmly. "First, you will meet with Agent Ramirez tomorrow and provide complete information about the investment scheme, including every victim you can identify. Second, you will sign a confession about the attempted fraud against me. Third, you will commit to making restitution to everyone you have harmed, even if it takes the rest of your life." Thomas nodded slowly, the fight gone out of him entirely. "And what happens then?" "Then I will help you find the best legal representation possible," I promised. "I will be there for every court appearance. I will visit you wherever you end up. And when you have served whatever sentence is imposed, I will help you rebuild your life on an honest foundation." "Why would you do that after what I did to you?" Thomas asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "Because I am your father," I answered simply. "That has not changed, even when everything else has." As Thomas broke down in tears of remorse, I placed a hand on his shoulder, not offering false comfort or easy forgiveness, but a promise that he would not face the difficult road ahead alone. The reconciliation, if it ever came, would be long and challenging. But for the first time in years, at least we were dealing in truth rather than deception. 6 months have passed since that fateful birthday that changed everything. The aftermath unfolded much as I expected, though some developments surprised even me. Thomas pled guilty to multiple counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and attempted bank fraud. His cooperation with authorities, combined with his lack of prior criminal record, resulted in a 5-year sentence at a minimum security federal facility, with the possibility of earlier release for continued good behavior and completion of rehabilitation programs. Amanda disappeared completely after fleeing my house that day. 3 weeks later, federal agents apprehended her at the Canadian border attempting to cross with false identification and nearly $200,000 in cash money she had apparently been skimming from the fraud scheme without Thomas's knowledge. Her betrayal of Thomas extended far deeper than either of us had imagined. She is now serving her own sentence, longer than Thomas's due to her flight attempt and lack of cooperation. I visit Thomas every Saturday at the correctional facility 2 hours from my home. Our conversations were strained and awkward at first, filled with long silences and carefully avoided topics. But gradually, something has begun to shift between us. Without Amanda's influence and the pressure of maintaining their fraudulent lifestyle, glimpses of the sun, I remember, occasionally emerge. During one visit, Thomas finally expressed genuine remorse that seemed to come from deep within, not just from the consequences he faced. "I keep thinking about all those people," he confessed, his voice low. "Retirees who trusted me with their life savings, widows who just wanted security, and you, Dad, especially you. I threw your birthday cake on the floor. Who does that to their own father? Someone who had lost their way completely," I answered truthfully. "But acknowledging that is the first step toward finding your way back." Thomas is participating in a financial restitution program, where a percentage of any future income will go toward repaying his victims. It will take decades, and some may never recover all they lost, but it is something. I have contributed to a victim compensation fund as well, though Frank advised against it legally. Some things transcend legal obligation. I sold the house Thomas and Amanda lived in, using my share of the proceeds to help establish the victim fund. I downsized to a comfortable apartment closer to Lisa and her family. The change has been refreshing, liberating me from a home that had become more mausoleum than sanctuary after Sarah's passing. Lisa has become an even more important part of my life. Her twin boys, now 7 years old, visit often, filling my apartment with laughter and energy I had forgotten could exist. She helped me join a support group for parents of adult children who have committed crimes, where I found understanding among others walking similar painful paths. The most unexpected development came 3 months ago, when I received a letter from Maria Sandoval, one of Thomas's fraud victims. I recognized her name from the court documents and braced myself for understandable anger. Instead, she wrote to thank me for my courage in turning in my own son and helping establish the restitution fund. We met for coffee, and I found a kindred spirit, a widow close to my age who understood loss and betrayal but refused to be defined by either. Our friendship has grown into something that brings warmth back into my life, something Sarah would have approved of wholeheartedly. Thomas has begun keeping a journal at the suggestion of his counselor, processing the choices that led him down such a destructive path. In our most recent visit, he shared something that stuck with me. "I always thought love meant giving people whatever they wanted," he said. "With Amanda, with clients, even with you. If I gave Amanda everything she wanted, that was love. If I promised clients impossible returns, that was making them happy. If I convinced you to give me money whenever I asked, that meant you loved me. I never understood that real love sometimes means saying no, setting boundaries, demanding accountability." His insight gave me hope that genuine change might be possible, that the moral compass Sarah and I had tried to instill might still exist beneath the layers of greed and self-justification. My 69th birthday passed quietly last week, celebrated with Lisa's family and a few close friends, including Maria. No elaborate cakes or expensive gifts, just sincere connection and appreciation for the people who bring value to my life. Thomas called from the facility, his birthday wishes awkward but genuine. He is working on a handmade card to send me, something he has not done since childhood. The path forward remains uncertain. Thomas will eventually be released, faced with the monumental task of rebuilding his life as a convicted felon. Our relationship will never return to what it was before, but perhaps it can evolve into something more authentic, built on harder truths, but stronger for having faced them. If there is wisdom I have gained from this painful chapter, it is this: love without boundaries is not really love at all. It is abdication. True love has the courage to say no when necessary, to demand accountability, to allow natural consequences rather than enabling destructive behavior. I failed Thomas for years by trying to protect him from the results of his choices. My misguided attempts to help actually harmed him in the long run, allowing small ethical compromises to grow into criminal behavior. Second chances are possible, but they must be earned through genuine remorse and concrete actions, not merely promised with empty words. Forgiveness does not mean erasing consequences or pretending harm never occurred. It means creating space for a new relationship to potentially emerge from the ashes of what was lost. As I enter my 70th year, I find myself strangely at peace despite all that has happened. The betrayal that seemed world-ending on that birthday night has transformed into an unexpected new beginning. I have closer relationships with Lisa and her family, new friendships like the one with Maria, and perhaps someday, a more honest relationship with my son. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between protecting someone you love and doing what you knew was right? How did you find the strength to make that decision? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey of betrayal, accountability, and tentative redemption resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need to hear that even our darkest moments can eventually lead to unexpected light. Thank you for walking this path with me today. And remember, it is never too late to choose integrity, even when that choice breaks your heart.